My first introduction to the work of Satoshi Kon was with his first film, Perfect Blue, something that was in fact introduced to me by Scott, who's now going to introduce it to you, dear listener.
Yes, Perfect Blue, when Mima Kirogu quits a small-time J-pop idol group to pursue a career in acting. It starts a chain of events that will cause more drama than is in the roles she's offered. Struggling to make a name for herself, she agrees to a controversial rape scene with hope of changing the public's perception of her. Some members of the public, however, seem violently opposed to any change in image, as members of the production crew start being gruesomely killed. This is upsetting enough, but between this stress and that caused by her being introduced to a website, Mima's Room, pretending to be Mima's diary and containing enough detail to know that the stalker has very close access to her, it's a bad time for Mima's mental health, and she will soon not know where the actor ends and she begins, or indeed where the person ends and her public image ends, be that the new one or the old. All this sets up a very engaging thriller indeed, albeit one that's on repeat viewing, maybe a touch too well signposted and relying a little bit too heavily on a correlation between physical beauty and character, or rather the lack of both, which, well, maybe hasn't aged well, but was a bit of a crutch back in 97. That, however, is a very slight niggle to pick with a story that's otherwise a very tightly told 80 minutes of pleasingly twisting narrative and character work that's never less than captivating. Now, I'll always have a small truckload full of nostalgia for Perfect Blue because I think it was the first anime that I'd seen, certainly in the cinema, that deals with adult themes, or, well, adult themes other than assorted flavours of violence. So it certainly opened up to me a vista of other avenues of story that could be explored in the medium, more concerned with internal conflict than external. But there had been things, of course, like Ghost in the Shell before it, but that was a sci-fi robot Trojan horse containing philosophy, not something, as with Perfect Blue, that could feel as comfortable told in live action. Well, at least thematically. However, one of the advantages of the medium for this kind of thing is the recurring Kon techniques of merging competing narratives and realities to keep you guessing about what's really happening while not alienating the audiences. I've seen less talented filmmakers try similar tricks and fall flat, but Kon was a master at it from the start. While I suppose you could say, almost objectively, that Kon went on to do better films on almost every axis you could judge a film, I would always have a soft spot for Perfect Blue for aforementioned nostalgia reasons, so I was perhaps a little bit apprehensive about revisiting it. I've not actually seen this in quite some time before watching it the other day, but I need not be worried. For a theatrical feature debut, it's remarkably accomplished, polished, and absorbing. Spoilers, there's not a Satoshi Kon film I've met that I won't recommend, so arguing about positions in the league table seems a little redundant, particularly given the tragically small league. But you might as well start at the beginning, and this is a very great beginning indeed.
Yes, I liked Perfect Blue from the beginning, and as I mentioned a little while ago, I have you to thank for that. Don't think I'd heard of it when you foisted I say, the DVD upon me back in the late 1990s.
Yes, it's like that scene in Clockwork Orange, if I remember lately.
Yeah, it's the DVD technique or something. I liked it from the get-go. I found it striking and interesting, and it kind of does... I know sexy is a weird word to use with animation. I find that kind of uncomfortable, but I think perhaps you'd understand where it's coming from. Like that you might have like a proper adult film that not necessarily for titillation, but that's like part of humans, rather than the slightly kind of more juvenile take that is at least a lot of other people's perception of anime.
Yeah.
And it's certainly got a lot of adult things and not, tentacle porn. Like, basically, this isn't Wicked City,
Sadly, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Satoshi Kon's great, but it's not where it's Sokodoji, Scott. Let's face it. And yeah, I like that it's, it's an intelligent thing. It's not the greatest of plots, because I think even my first viewing I could tell exactly where it's going, and I had forgotten almost everything about it, because I knew this is a film I liked, and I'm just like, I'll not bother watching it. I know I did not like it. Yeah. And it's like, 20 years have passed, oops, I meant to fix that sooner. That's maybe not 20 years, but it's been a while. I've forgotten like most of the actual plot of it.
Yeah.
Very strong memory of the visuals and the general themes, and the actual plot, it's not subtle. There's a couple times you think maybe it's going to kind of be subversive and kind of do a double bluff or something. But I don't think it was ever in danger of that. And you can be fairly confident you know where it's going. There's a line where, after Mima has been in a few episodes of Double Bind, the crime-based television show she's on, and a couple of her former fans are talking and say, "It was so boring. Why do all psycho thrillers made in Japan turn out that way?" Like, well, quite clearly then it's not going to turn out like you think it would if it was a more conventional story.
Yeah.
But then the ugly guy, which is a thing in anime, in particular, called a gonk. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Scott.
No, it's,
Yeah, don't. I will not get it out of my head for the next year. Don't, please. Damn it. Yeah, it's. I'll just read out the entry from TV Tropes here, just because it's rather than me fumbling to try and get it into words at the moment, because I didn't prepare for this bit. But pretty much the only way in animation to make someone ugly or unusual looking is to do it deliberately and without subtlety. This character is not just unattractive, they're absurdly ugly. And the result can be extremely jarring if it deviates too much from the rest of the show's look, though that's usually the point. It goes on to say that these characters are usually intended as comic relief. That's not the case here, and it's actually not how they're used a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. But the stalker, the Me-Mania guy, it's so obvious that he's like, it can't possibly be him, or at least not just him.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a few. I don't know if there are failings there, because I guess it's not really the point. It's just that I would like the actual plot to have been perhaps a little more sophisticated. It's still enjoyable. Mm-hmm. It's just that it's kind of easy to guess. But it's his first feature debut. It's incredibly assured. It's made on a budget of about $1 million.
Yeah, roughly. Touch less for a call, right? Yeah.
Around that. It's not a lot of money, given the time-intensive nature of animation. Mm-hmm. But there's like incredible attention to detail. It looks really lovely. There's some really wonderfully inventive scenes that just stick in the memory, like when Mima's going along the street and real Mima is bouncing along the tops of lampposts.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so striking, really interesting. And then the way, partly how it's drawn, partly actually the script here too, when it's doing the sequences with the rape scene, and it's not shot. There should be a better word for that in animation. If there's one, I don't know it. I can't put it to mind. But it's shot in a way that's it's not actually the rape scene they shoot for the most part. That's a minor moment. It's actually they're shooting the shooting of a rape scene.
Yeah.
And like all the nudity in this and the bit with the photographer too, it's all really uncomfortable. It's not meant to be titillating. It's meant to be uncomfortable because this woman's sort of being forced into this, at least by societal or career pressure. And the nudity is uncomfortable, and like it's kind of quite a clever thing, quite a difficult thing to be able to get that across in an animation.
Yeah.
It works really well. And the rape scene too, as I was saying, when it's like, you see how it's awkward, and that it's just a job, and she's clearly slightly distressed by it, but you can just see that the character thinking, well, I've agreed to all this, people are counting me, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But with the actor that's on top of her, the would-be rapist, saying like, right, pause, back to one, do the scene again. It's like, you like, oh, I'm really sorry about this. I quite like that actually, because I mean, especially coming to this, previous examples of scenes like that in anime for me was Wicked City.
Yes.
It's quite different. There's a lot of clever dialogue that just it mixes in the character's reality with the dialogue in the show really well, which is why you're not. Maybe on a first viewing you might be a little in doubt about what's happening when, but it's just it works quite well. Like the blonde, like it all fits in a way that with the trauma that's going on in her head, and she feels like she's going mad, and it mixes in with what works in the show. It's just nicely done.
Yeah.
Like that real blending of the fiction and the real life. It's just a really, really accomplished film. Incredibly solid for a first-time feature. Mm-hmm. And I just really like it and would recommend anybody watch it.
Absolutely. You're spot on with the structure, and it's something that Colin comes back to time and time again. And partly one of the reasons, of course, that he's a great loss is that I can't think of anyone doing films like this. They're so good at blending these kind of various strands of reality and imagination together and keeping an audience guessing, and he only got better at it as time went on. And it's just, I can't think of anyone who's doing something similar. If anyone knows of anyone, I fully admit I've not been keeping up to date on either experimental film or anime, so maybe there is someone who's taking this ball and running with it, but I can't think of anyone who's doing it. I would like to see more of this kind of thing.
Yeah, if you look at some of the work of Masaki Yusa, Scott, we talked about his more conventional Ride Your Wave a couple of months ago now, I guess.
Yeah.
I've honestly lost track of time. It could have been a year ago, and if you told me that, I would not necessarily doubt you. But his stuff more like Night is Short, Walk On Girl. It's not got the same sort of themes as Satoshi Kon's work, but he's kind of doing more outre experimental stuff in a lot of his work. So I mean, I'm aware of some of the people out there, but not a lot. And I don't think it's a common thing by any means. Satoshi Kon is a kind of towering figure in that general area.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and also a properly nerve-jangling soundtrack on this one as well, which I don't know if any of the other ones actually have quite the same effect on me. I've always found the soundtrack to Perfect Blue to be particularly kind of weirdly haunting in a kind of jangly kind of way. Not that the rest of the films don't have great soundtracks, but certainly they're not as kind of good at putting you on edge as they are in Perfect Blue. So, yeah, so a lot of things to like in Perfect Blue and very little to dislike.
To be honest, actually, I didn't really even notice the soundtrack when I watched Perfect Blue this time around. Other than it maybe at times, not the music itself, but like the style of the music was a bit slightly prescriptive. Which is a problem I have with lots of films. It's so common as to almost be like the default. But I'm not sure I have a point to make other than that I didn't really notice it, which is unusual. I think I was just more engrossed by the plot and the character in particular this time, and I was less thinking about the music.
Sure.
Which because I did notice the music in the other films, and one in which I'll particularly mention it. Yeah, I have to go watch that again quite soon just to listen to the music. You know, as every chance I'll get to think, oh right, yes, okay, of course, but at the moment I can't quite bring it to mind.